Urgent question, Siobhain McDonagh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Foreign Secretary if she will make a statement on the state of emergency declared in Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are closely monitoring the fast-moving and fluid political, economic and security situation in Sri Lanka. The Minister of State for South Asia has engaged directly with our High Commissioner and team on the ground. We encourage all sides to find a peaceful, democratic and inclusive approach to resolving the current political and economic challenges. Sri Lanka's political and economic challenges should be resolved through an inclusive and cross-party process. Any transition of power should be peaceful, constitutional and democratic, and I call on all parties to exercise restraint and refrain from violence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A state of emergency has been declared in Sri Lanka by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe after President Rajapaksa fled the country last night. This follows weeks of protests on the island, with inflation running at more than 50%, rocketing the price of everyday goods. The health system is on the verge of collapse due to lack of medicine. There is no fuel for essential transport services and medical vehicles. There have been power cuts, school closures, and we woke this morning to protesters overtaking the Prime Minister's office, tear gas fired by police, a curfew imposed on the capital, and the national TV broadcast suspended. This is a crisis in democracy, decades in the making. The world turned away when the Rajapaksa government cluster-bombed its own people committing genocide, murdered its journalists and enriched a small group led by one family. Their malign dynastic control has stripped the country bare, leaving behind a broken nation on the brink of economic collapse. Sri Lanka is unable to buy essential goods from abroad and for the first time in its history failed to make a payment on its foreign debt, a consequence of swinging populist tax cuts at the time of economic instability. Tory leadership candidates, beware. An IMF bailout is essential. But does the Minister agree with me that any financial assistance must go hand in hand with democratic and human rights reforms, particularly for the Tamil community, who continue to fight for truth, justice and accountability as a result of the human rights abuses perpetrated at the end of the civil war by the outgoing Rajapaksa regime?
I'm grateful for the honourable member for her question. As I say, that we have been monitoring this very fast-moving and fluid situation, and both kind of political, economic and security one too. And as in her question as well, we urge for a peaceful and democratic transition in line with the Constitution and the rule of law. As I say, the Minister for South Asia has been thoroughly engaged with the team on the ground in the High Commission. And also, I'd just like to kind of stress that actually he visited Sri Lanka earlier this year and specifically met with a range of civil society groups to discuss the human rights situation. And he also, at the time as well, met with ministers, for instance, including the President and the Foreign Minister, and urged them to take steps to improve human rights and deliver justice and accountability following the conflict. But I'd like to reassure the House, we are kind of closely monitoring the situation on the ground, a very, very fast-moving and fluid situation.